Hello, hello. Welcome to the Five Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. I interview the top commercial real estate investors and industry experts so you can learn from their experiences. So if you're an investor, a high W-2 earner, or real estate or tech sales professional that wants to invest in real estate without having to manage properties or leave your day job, then this podcast is for you. Or if you're already investing in real estate, but you're doing it part-time and you want to become a full-time multifamily or full-time commercial real estate investor, this podcast is for you too. You're going to learn a ton. You will learn from real-life multifamily investors and other professionals in the industry. They're going to share their blueprints for success, and I'm super excited that you're here. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, hello. This is Abel Pacheco, your host for the Five Talents Podcast. We are super excited yet again. And I know I say this every show, but literally I'm super excited about this show because Brian Adams is an amazing individual. You're going to learn a ton from Brian. First, thank you. Thank you for joining, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm pumped. If you don't know Brian Adams, he's the president and founder of Excelsior Capital. That he spearheads the investor relations and capital markets arm of their firm. And they have 10 years of experience in real estate private equity. They've done a ton of business in this space, $400 million worth of real estate, and they've raised if you do the math, that's LTV of 75%. The banks are going to give you a good portion of that, but it still means you got to be able to raise about $110 million worth of private equity. And that's what he does. And prior to forming Excelsior, he also co-founded Priam Properties. So it's essentially an institutional real estate private equity sponsored firm. And he did that in 2010. And, he provided the leadership and direction of the firm. And he's always been in this capital market area, investment management area, investor relations. So we are going to learn a ton. Grab some notes if you're interested in how in the world does somebody acquire that much property. Well, number one, there's a team. There's a pretty awesome team, but you got to know some basic components that you can apply to your business today. And Brian's going to bring some of the heat. So, Brian, let me turn it over to you in your own words. Please give me, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me on. I think this will be a lot of fun. So, just kind of a brief background. I'm a New Yorker who married a Nashville girl. Went to law school up in Boston, and then moved here about 15 years ago. My wife's family has a single family office based here in Middle Tennessee. So I had this huge privilege of marrying into this affluent family that had exposure to private equity, venture capital, commercial real estate. I didn't really have a sense of what any of those things were until I joined the board and I started kind of seeing how the family worked with GPs, sponsors, direct co-investment opportunities, et cetera. Learned a lot, became enamored with being an entrepreneur, started just really loving real estate, connected with my business partner, who's also a New Yorker, who married a woman from Nashville. And we started the business 11 years ago. And we can kind of get into the nitty gritty, but initially started raising funds, kind of blind pool commingled funds, and raised 3 of those. They were small, but where things really started to pick up for us was offering people direct co-investment deal by deal syndications. And that was probably 6 years ago now. And that's really when the business kind of took off. And to your point, we've been able to put together a decent sized portfolio over the years, mostly in the Southeast, Midwest.
Yeah. What an awesome run, man. And I want to dig into each of those, but before we kind of keep moving, I'll give the guest, for those people that don't know, what is a blind pool fund, a blind pool commingled fund, so that they at least get an idea here.
Yeah. Our business unfortunately has a bunch of jargon associated with it, and I try not to use it, but it's kind of hard.
It happens. Helpful. It's helpful too, because I understand. But go ahead. Sorry.
The best way to explain it is a fund versus a syndication is that in a fund, you have the capital, but no deals. And in a syndication, you have the deal, but no capital yet. And this is kind of like the reverse order of doing acquisitions or how to, um, buy commercial real estate.
Yeah.
So a blind pool commingled fund would be you commit $100 to the idea that I have or to the investment thesis that I have. You don't give me that money day one when you make the commitment. I draw that commitment down over a course of 2 to 3, maybe 4 years in incremental components, 10, 20% capital calls. And then I deploy that capital when I find opportunities. Whereas obviously in the syndication, I come to you with a deal and I say, hey, you should invest in just this one opportunity, just a single asset. A fund is a diversified portfolio of different properties, whereas syndication obviously is just one specific deal.
Yeah, this is awesome. Even in just saying that first part, there's many people I know that are listening to their podcast. If you're a first time listener, just understanding how this world works is an eye opener in the beginning. They're like, there are people that put money in to a fund and not know what they're getting. Yes. And it's called a blind. That's why it's called a blind pool.
A lot of people, yeah. I mean, and it is kind of shocking when you take a step back to think about how that works, but you have to understand, and we can go into capital raising and how the ecosystem works, but it's really important to, before you start your company or you want to be in the commercial real estate business, you've got to understand what the vehicle you're going to use to acquire the properties is going to look like. And that's really a function of who your logical investor base is, right? So for some folks that have institutional, and when I mean institutional, I mean pension plans, endowments, insurance companies. If that's your network, or those are the folks that you know, their minimum check sizes are going to be 25 million or more, right? But that's the ballpark range. You and I both know that that limits your ability to buy a single asset. They're just $25 million of equity plus the leverage.
Yeah.
You're looking at $100 million. Yeah, I mean, it's just a very challenging place, but these institutions need to deploy massive amounts of capital, but they also want diversity. And that's where they feel comfortable investing in. They're slow moving, big bureaucratic organizations. They don't have the ability to greenlight a deal in a day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, my network is high net worth individuals, family offices, independent RIAs, which are, boutique wealth management firms or multifamily offices. These folks really like direct co-investments because they often don't get to see them. And oftentimes the only way that they get direct real estate exposure is through a fund of funds, which is like a fund that deploys into funds, which is also probably shocking to some folks to hear, but that they do exist and they're a big business.
I'm running my first one right now.
Yeah. And it makes sense for a lot of folks, right? I mean, there's a place for it within this ecosystem, but again, it's not for everybody. And so for us, that syndication model was just a really good fit for who our logical investor base was and the goals that they were trying to achieve.
Yeah. Thank you for breakdown and a little illumination of this world, right? So thank you. And then before we move forward, I'm going to take a couple steps back because 10 years in the space, I view you, hearing you speak, seeing you at some of the conferences, hearing the content you put out and just your knowledge base of it. You're an expert in the space. You raise $110 million, you and a team, you're one of the most expertise sources that I have right now on this topic, right? 10 years ago, you said, or before you met your wife, et cetera, you were not privy to this world. You didn't know it existed. So kind of give me some mindset of just how you grew up, where you came from, just so everyone understands you don't have to be born into this world to figure it out, get educated, go work with this type of individual, et cetera. But, tell us a little bit about where you came from, man.
Yeah. And so for people who aren't watching this live, and if you can't tell from my voice, I'm a white dude, right? So let me just put this out there, and I want to be very serious about it, that I have the immense privilege in this country of being a decent looking white guy who went to great schools.
You look good, bro. You look good. You got a good set of hair too. I'm jealous.
I got the flow. I got my hockey haircut going.
I love it.
But that does allow me, I think, to get a lot of doors opened. And even more importantly, when I get into the room, the assumption is I know what I'm doing. So let's just put that out there, right? Because
Yeah.
I went to great schools because my parents afforded me that opportunity. I married into an affluent family. By association, that's just afforded me a lot of connections, right? So that is what it is. But to answer your question, I grew up in upstate New York, out in the country, grew up comfortably, but certainly not family office type dollar figures. Like my father's an attorney. My mother was a child psychologist. She's retired. My brother and I never wanted for anything. We went to the best private school that was in our area. I went to a great liberal arts college that I didn't have to take a loan out to go to. And then I went to a law school. So that was kind of my upbringing, but it was certainly was no exposure to financial markets, private equity, and certainly not anything about what a syndication is, what a fund is. I mean, those are all things that I kind of learned on the job for sure.
Yeah, that's great. It's good to hear that mindset. And it sounds like you had a very good upbringing, but even at that, where some people can't connect $1 million worth of capital to go deploy a deal, and that's in my area, that's what we're doing. We're buying a $10 million deal, and that number sounds massive if you've never done it. The banks give you 7.5 million. You're raising a couple of million plus renovation. You're looking at $3 million. For somebody that's never done it, i.e. me 4 years ago, I was like, this is daunting. I don't know if I could ever do that. Now we're on deal number 7, going on number 8-ish. And I'm like, oh, actually everyday normal people do it. I've been able to get it done, and with some friends and partners or whatever. But that level to tens and hundreds of millions of dollars is also, it's just this massive chasm that you have to cross. For probably one, from an education standpoint, and how to knowing the right people, but then also even your mindset to kind of swim in the world, right? So maybe talk to us a little bit about the mindset. Like, how did that, you don't just go and raise $110 million right off the bat. It's like there's a lot of hurdles I'm sure you had to cross, and obstacles in your mind to get there.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And it doesn't have to be as hard as I made it. I actually put together a presentation. If you go on our website or check out LinkedIn, I put a presentation together about how to raise capital as a first-time sponsor or entrepreneur, which can apply beyond just real estate. But I think the biggest lesson I've learned is to be empathetic with the needs and the problems of your logical investor base. And I think it's really important to understand that second part, your logical investor base, right? I mean, even though I've been able to raise XYZ amount of capital, it doesn't mean I can go to Blackstone and pitch those guys. It doesn't mean I can go to the Harvard endowment and pitch them. We don't know the same people. We don't speak the same language. We don't go to the same conferences. We don't look at the same deals. We don't know the same service providers. It's going to be way outside my comfort zone. And they're not going to understand anything that I'm talking about when I talk about a $12 billion acquisition in Chattanooga. But the folks that I do know are high net worth individuals, families, these independent RIAs. And so I think the biggest takeaway is, instead of leading with your ego and saying, I'm really smart, I found this great deal, you should do it, and then to kind of cram it down people's throats, spend time talking to the 100 people that might realistically give their time and resources to you, and understand what their problems are, the challenges they're facing. Ask them to paint a picture of the perfect real estate investment opportunity for them, and have a pretty blunt conversation about what they could allocate towards a deal, right? If you do that 100 times, you could probably do it in 30 days if you knock out phone calls and Zooms now and coffee meetings. And if your takeaway is, man, like, these people really want ground up development and they really want to write $1 million checks, well, give them what they want, solve that problem. If you get the takeaway of, these folks feel most comfortable with single family rentals, they probably each can write a $5,000 to $10,000 check, well, bring them a product type that can solve for that you realistically think you can raise on. I think the biggest fundamental problem is people think a good deal will raise on its own, and it's just simply not the case. The best way to do this is to pre-sell market, and come about it from an empathetic standpoint where you're providing a solution set to their problems. So it's not so much a pitch and a sales call when you bring them a deal. It's, hey, Bill, Susan, you told me what your challenges are. You told me what what you would be looking for ideally. I'm bringing this to you. So now the conversation is binary. Do you like this? No. Okay, well, I'll bring you the next one. Do you like this? Yes. Okay, well, what's the allocation you're going to bring here? It's a very different mindset.
Yeah, I love it. It's so simple, where some people get stuck at simple. They go, no, this is too easy. And what I've really found, at least myself personally, every time I've cracked open a new book or learned a new technique or learned, headed down a new path for education, it's the simple ones that are the ones that work. It's just, you have to work them. And just like you said, if the working part, you have to talk to 100 people or 1,000 or whatever the amount of number, whether it's 10, 20, 100, I got to figure out what those 100 people want. And that's your network today. You don't have to go searching for new. You just have to start with where you're at and start there.
Yeah. And the most important thing is talk to them, but more importantly, listen. Ask them questions that actually listen, as opposed to just you talking the whole time, because you're not going to learn anything.
Yeah.
And so for us, I could spend an hour talking about what we look for in opportunities, how we think about markets, specific deals, but fundamentally, we do three things: direct co-investment, double-digit cash on cash yield, tax benefits that come from real estate ownership. I can tell anybody on a ski lift, an airplane, in line to get coffee, and anyone in my organization can do the same exact thing, because those are the three problems that our investor base has. And we are a solution set for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I remember you saying this at the Apartment Investing Rocks Academy presents.
Yeah.
It's a long one, but the conference that you're at, I was like, man, that's exactly what we're looking for. Very simple, simplistic understanding of what you're trying to solve for. And I like the reverse engineering. You're trying to figure out what people need, and empathetic is how I heard you say it right now. So even then, that's great.
Because nobody really cares about your. They want to know your track record, but they don't care about your background. They don't care where you went to school. It's what's in it for me. And if you lead with that, it'll be much smoother, and you'll be much more efficient with your time and your energy.
Yeah, that's great. So help us understand how you go from where you were to where you are today, in terms of, your business, your track record, on the same topic, the track record and number of investors. Did you start with 5, 10, 15 investors? Did you have 100? Do you have 1,000 now? In different layers, just kind of give us those 10 years.
Yeah. I just started out having coffee with anybody that'd be willing to meet with me, and had a mentor who has since passed away, but he built up an incredible portfolio of multifamily properties, super nice guy. And he told me early on in my career, when I started doing these networking deals, he said, listen, if you're going to have coffee with somebody and you think they're a prospect, but you're not sure, take them to breakfast or buy them a cup of coffee, because it's the cheapest meal of the day.
There you go.
So, spend the time, go out there, have the conversations. And there's another adage, which I've found that is completely true, which is, if you ask for advice, you'll get money. But if you ask for money, you'll get advice.
There you go.
So this is a really good way to begin to build your network up. Yeah. And it started out just, my father-in-law said, I'm going to invest with you. You can tell everybody in town that I'm investing with you. I'll make 2 introductions for you, and the rest is on your own, which was a really challenging, because at the time I thought you could do a lot more than this. He could invest more, he could make more introductions. And it was frustrating at first, but ultimately, looking back on it, it was the best thing he ever could have done for me, because it made me learn how to network, how to make introductions, how to get an introduction, how to make referrals, how to get a meeting, how to sell, how to pitch, how to market the hard way. It probably took me 5 years, but slowly, incrementally, I built that up. I made a lot of mistakes this first iteration because I didn't scale appropriately, which we can get into. But to give perspective, today we have, I think, 550 active investors, and our distribution list is about 5,000 contacts total.
Wow. So it's about 10%-ish, a little bit greater, of the total amount of people that you've spoken to, had conversations, rather listened to, in your word, you were empathetic with what they're needing. And still 10% of them are the investors.
Yeah. I mean, you've got it. And I had a hard conversation with an entrepreneur in my office last week about this. He's trying to raise, I think, $3 million. He's never done this before.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, you're looking at $25, $50, maybe $100,000 tickets from friends and family. And your conversion rate's going to be, if you're really good, 3 to 4%. So you need to go out there and talk to a couple hundred people. That's going to take you 6 months.
Yeah.
You don't have enough time to do this.
Yeah.
You don't have enough time to do it if you're trying to start the deal today. You should have gone back and done this 6 months ago. Yeah. And that's just the reality of what this is. And now we're at a point where we have awesome investors. I mean, we're always interested in meeting more folks that kind of understand what we're doing, we're trying to achieve, and they're the right fit for us. But now we're at a place where, we've been oversubscribed on most of the acquisitions we've made. If you're a legacy investor, you get a first look, you get an allocation, and then we try to bring in new people every deal. But the 80-20 rule is probably right. So about 80% of folks in our investments are renewals or legacy investors, then 20% are kind of new contacts.
Yeah, that's great. It's good insight. There are a few things here, right? So number one, people underestimate the amount of work sometimes that they have to do it, or they either that or they underestimate the fact that they have a good deal and they thought it wouldn't work, but you really it would have worked had you just talked to 100 people, and they stop at 3 or 4 or 7 maybe no's. And this is for me, I think one of the things that helped me, I've been a sales guy for years, and people, I guess you can think of whatever you want as a salesperson. But one of the things I've truly learned from being a sales guy for all the years was the word I heard the most was no. And you just hear no. It's like, yeah, that's expected. I'm going to hear no 8 times before I get to 2 yeses. If I'm really good, that's a 20% close rate.
Yeah, that's a killer conversion. And frankly, if you're not getting a bunch of no's, you're not making enough asks.
Yeah. So I think that's one people that just underestimate. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he started a new business, and he goes, "Hey, I know you're raising capital. I got a new business, and the model sounded awesome. He's a really good plan." And I go, I think it's perfect. You just need to go do this, and you need to go talk to like 100 people now. And he's like, yeah, but do you think I could do it? I go, yeah, if you talk to 100 people, I think you'll get some investors to come into this model. You just got to talk to a bunch of them.
And frankly, it's a lot, I won't say easier, but it's more efficient now, because back in the day, and I'm not even that old, but I mean, 10 years ago, the normal cadence was you cold call, cold email, or you get a warm introduction, you do a phone call, you do a coffee meeting. And then every month you do lunch or a call or a coffee. And then like 6 months later, you can kind of feel what's going to happen. Yeah. Now with social media and content creation and podcasts. Right? Yeah. Like if I pitch you, you can spend 10 minutes looking at everything that we put together or hearing me talk on any number of these shows. And you could totally understand who I am, what I do, who I work with. And you can choose, right? Like I get what Brian's doing, or I don't work on that frequency. That's not my cup of tea. It's a lot easier now, I think, but you have to be disciplined. You've got to be intentional and you have to be consistent in putting your message out there. But to your point, I think there's 12.5 million accredited investor households in America. You've got to convert like 1% and you've got a great business, but it's not a sales call unless you make an ask.
Yeah. I love it. So thank you very much for this insight. You're jogging all the old memories that I have as well of over all the years. Hello. You're listening to the 5 Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. If you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you're serious about achieving financial freedom. Are you ready to create your own path through multifamily investing for yourself and your family? Then I know you're going to appreciate our Investor's Guide to Multifamily Investing. It's titled Tackling Commercial Real Estate the Easy Way. We use this guide to invest ourselves in $93 million worth of real estate. So we're going to show you the basic mechanics of multifamily syndications and how to evaluate your next passive investment opportunity. So the best part, if you subscribe to our podcast now, leave us a review and a rating. I'm going to give you a free copy of our ebook. So please take a moment to do that now. Once you've done that, go to 5tcre.com/ebook, 5tcre.com/ebook. Make sure to let us know you left a review and we're going to send you a free copy. So thank you so much for subscribing to the 5 Talents Podcast. We really appreciate it. So let me ask you a couple more questions on the commingled blind pool fund. And now you went to some different models, right? You said, I think there was an aha moment somewhere through that allowed you, that pointed you in a different direction. What was that happened? And what are you doing now?
Yeah. So we started offering our fund investors, which are called limited partners, right? It's the same as a syndication. You're the general partner operator, and then your investors are limited partners. The fund operates the same way. There's a GP and an LP, or a group of LPs. We started offering our LPs sidecar, which are direct co-investment opportunities. Every acquisition the fund made, we started offering our LPs the chance to participate. And they loved it. Like, they went wild, and they started bringing in their friends and family to look at these one-off deals. And we pretty quickly realized, like, we're in the wrong business. We shouldn't be raising these funds. It's a hard sell. It's a tough product. It's a long sales cycle. And I don't think our logical investor base really wants them, frankly, for real estate, at least, or for the type of real estate that we were doing. And so that's when we pivoted to syndication. And that really allowed us to scale much more efficiently. So that was kind of the aha moment for us.
Yep. Trust me, give me your money. I'll invest it right into something I buy in the future. You won't know what it is now, but trust me, I'm going to buy something good. Yeah. As opposed to, here's what we are acquiring: this property, this one individual asset, and we're going to go after, or a portfolio, but this is what we're buying, and we're closing it in 60 days. Are you in?
Yeah. And I think, there's also this component of operating a fund is a business in itself, right? You need to have administration, legal, compliance, audit. There's a lot of work and money that goes into being a fund operator. I don't think people fully appreciate how much time and energy and money it takes to run a fund itself. So that was another component of just a lot of overhead that we're able to kind of shed and be a little bit leaner with our operations.
Got it. Okay, that makes perfect sense. So what the heck are you buying, man? This is a lot of real estate. So $400 million. What have you acquired, and what are you after today? And what's all the goodness?
Historically, it's suburban office in secondary markets. When I say a secondary market, I mean not a gateway tier 1 place like New York or Chicago. We're buying in places like Nashville, Tampa, Raleigh, Kansas City, Indianapolis. We did something in Chattanooga recently, working on a deal in El Paso and West Palm Beach right now.
Cool.
So kind of growing secondary markets. Historically, it was office. Even before the pandemic, we started pivoting towards more of this industrial flex medical products. And the way I like to explain that is either, that single story commercial buildings that you see near airports or on the side of a highway. And this is maybe, a little bit too crass, but it's kind of like the mullet of commercial real estate. It's kind of office, retail in the front, distribution,
that's awesome.
Industrial in the back.
Yeah.
So you've got a storefront maybe where it's single bay access. There's really no common areas. Then there's no shared bathrooms. And then on the back, there might be a distribution bay or
my product and
like a free clear, that you can use for distribution, or et cetera. And it's really nice for a whole host of reasons. We think that's kind of where a lot of folks are moving to, because they're a little bit more, a cheaper option for the tenant. They're triple net, which means that the tenants pay for operating expenses, taxes, insurance. So a little bit easier for us to manage as we grow our portfolio. And there's just a huge need for that type of product now with this e-commerce boom and last mile distribution, et cetera. So that, and then kind of medical arts. So these aren't necessarily surgery centers, but they're places where you might get your LASIK done, maybe, a primary care physician, those type of things that you still need to do in person, but you don't need to go to the hospital or a surgery center to do them. Those are kind of the product types that we like right now.
Got it. Okay, that's awesome, man. And your acquisition process, how do you go find all these deals? This is a lot of properties and a lot of deals, a lot of capital. What does your acquisition team look like, and how do you go find them all?
Yeah, so we have dedicated acquisition folks in-house that all they're doing is looking for opportunities. And a big mistake that I see people make is they come to me and they say, "Oh, I want to be a principal. I want to be on the buy side." But if you want to be on the buy side, you need to go somewhere else, because we're either selling ourselves to raise capital or we're selling ourselves to win deals. So we are sell side people all day long. And the way that we find acquisitions, it's all broker driven, right? I think it's very rare to have a principal to principal transaction on an acquisition. So there's always an intermediary. Oftentimes it's a leasing broker who has a really close relationship with the ownership group. They want to keep that leasing work because typically about 80% of their take home pay is leasing. The other 20% is capital markets selling. And so we'll get a call because we have a good brand, we have a good reputation. We're known in the marketplace to not retrade, close in a timely manner, be efficient. And what we found is that $10 to $15 million acquisition price point, it's just a very inefficient buyer pool. You often get kind of a one-off group or maybe a small family or somebody who's putting together their first syndication to buy these things. And for us, we have great seller references. We have great broker references. We have our portfolio, obviously. We have a team of people that are professional, right? And so it really allows us to put a little bit of pressure on the selling group and say, hey, if you want to fully market this thing, double blind auction, go for it. We're probably not going to win that bidding contest. But if you're willing to take a little bit of pricing off the table, we will close this thing in 90 days, 75 days. And unless something comes up in diligence, we're not going to retrade you just for the sake of retrading you on price. And that's proven to be all the difference in the world for us. And we get a lot of off-market looks that way.
Yeah. I love it. So that's ends up being a secret sauce to you guys. Not so secret as we're talking about.
Yeah.
Here,
I mean, there's nothing, it's just a lot of hard work.
Good business on doing what you said you're going to do. Knowing in advance, this is exactly what we're looking for. You've already done a lot of the due diligence in advance, the market, the deal type, the competition, what you should be paying, operational. And then, as long as there's no surprises on the actual property, then you're going to move forward. You're going to close. Capital's not an issue, obviously. So what's hard? What's the difficult part right now? What's the obstacle or the challenges that you guys are facing? We're all facing them on some level.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest mistakes I've made in my career have to do with not putting enough energy and time and money into the infrastructure itself. And I think a big challenge that entrepreneurs and sponsors in the space make, and a question that not enough investors ask, is the real estate deals have to make sense. They have to work and they have to stand alone. And it's important to ask a lot of questions about that. But the infrastructure, sales, marketing, HR, acquisitions, asset management, all of those things that have really nothing to do with the investments themselves have to work in order for the real estate deals to scale efficiently, right? So your tax, your audit, your controller, these are things that you need to come out of pocket for to pay for, investor relations, et cetera, because you can't just be a deal guy in this business and survive long term. And half of this is the investor experience has to be top notch. Reporting, investor relations, everything has to be institutional grade. because I think people assume that you're going to try to make money on the opportunities because the way that the economics work, it's good for them and good for you.
Yeah.
But what they won't forgive you, and what I think is inexcusable, is to have suboptimal reporting, investor relations. And I think not enough people don't ask the question of like, well, what are the expectations going to be as me as an investor on a daily, monthly, quarterly, annual basis? And we front run all that. We kind of tell people, hey, this is what you can expect. These are the prerogatives. These are the protocols. These are the reporting. These are the templates we use. You can look at all of that. But I don't think enough people ask that question. I don't think enough sponsors are focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very hard, in my opinion, to be successful long term if you're just focused on the deals itself and you don't really take into account and take seriously the fact that you're also a small business owner. Mm-hmm. And small businesses in America fail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is that's all good stuff, and that's very very helpful because I can think about my own processes, the deals that I'm in as a passive investor. I can think about the teams that I'm partnered with, that it's their communication versus the ones I'm handling, et cetera, investor relations, and kind of even grade myself like, I'm probably not doing the best on this one and this one. These are really great, but how do I make those the same exact way, the same exact every single time, every single deal, regardless of what it is? And they got a really great experience where people just get, communication, their expectations are met. If you set them correctly, I'm going to report quarterly or monthly. Well, if you set expectations for monthly and you're always, you missed one, you're like, oh, that was not, it started off bad. You're better setting them quarterly and hitting them every quarter.
And this really goes to, it's a big problem in our industry, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be the Blue Man Group and not Siegfried and Roy. Because when Siegfried and Roy get the throats torn out by a tiger, the show is over.
Yeah.
But the Blue Man Group, it can be performing in 20 different places at once and still operating, right? So you want systems and processes that are documented, that are referable, and that are transferable in order to scale efficiently. This is not a one-man show.
You're gonna have to say this part again, man, because this is awesome. The Blue Man Group. Tell me, why do I want to be the Blue Man Group?
So if you own the Blue Man Group, the Blue Man Group can be performing in Vegas, New York, Paris, Singapore, and Australia on the same day. And everyone that goes to that show says, I'm seeing the Blue Man Group. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Siegfried and Roy, they're only making money and they're only entertaining their audience when they're on the stage.
Yeah.
And when something happens, like that show is over. And, you just don't want that as a business. It's not a great business model.
I love it, man. That's the third time, because I asked you to repeat it now. Once before, and it was a big light bulb that went off. Yeah, we absolutely need systems, processes. It needs to be repeatable. It needs
goals
to be anybody can do it.
Yeah, goals are great, right? Like I don't begrudge people personal goals, but for us, it's not AUM, it's not square footage. It's, can I put a system and process in place that allows us to scale efficiently and still affords my investors an institutional level experience? Yeah. Because that is the end goal, right? Is for them to have an incredible experience, but also to allow us to scale efficiently so we can continue to grow on who we serve and what we're doing.
Brother, thank you very much, Brian. This has been amazing. So I sincerely appreciate it. I've had an amazing conversation and learned a ton. Before we go, who do you want to reach out to you? If our investors want to call, if our network wants to reach out, where do they go? How do I contact you? And then who do you actually want to reach out to you?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I mean, I'm really active on LinkedIn. You can always just look me up, shoot me a note. I'm happy to talk to anybody about anything if I can help in any way. We have a website, obviously, excelsiorgp.com. You can see our portfolio. You can check out the resources and the content we've created. In terms of people I want to talk to, if you're interested in getting into the business, you want some advice, I'm always happy to talk. from the investor standpoint, if you want access to direct deals that achieve a double-digit cash-on-cash yield and give you all the tax benefits that come along with direct real estate ownership, give me a call.
I love it. I love it. And you put together how to raise millions of dollars as a first-time capital raiser.
Millions of dollars. Yeah, I mean, I put together a presentation. It's free, just because this is the number one question I get. How do I raise capital in my first deal specifically? You can go to the website or shoot me a note on LinkedIn and I'll send you the link. It's like a 30-minute presentation and hopefully it helps. I don't think it'll solve all your problems, but maybe it'll help save some time and energy and effort. And you can achieve what you're hoping you achieve a little bit more efficiently. Yeah,
no doubt. I'm sure that's an amazing resource. So somebody that's listening on the active side, ping Brian. Somebody that's listening on the investing side, go ping Brian and get in his world. And this is, I'm truly grateful. So thank you very much, Brian. And is there anything else that we haven't covered today? Anything you were hoping I asked about, I just didn't get around to? Something in your business you want to bring exposure to? Just anything in general? Where
no, man, this has been great. I like I said, I really dig what you're doing. I love your positive vibe. You're helping a ton of people. Your meetups are really great. Everything you're doing is awesome. I'm glad to be a part of the network and to be on the show. And I mean, we covered upstate New York. We covered mistakes. We covered tiger mauling. I think we touched a lot. We covered a lot of ground. I'm not sure where else to go, but thanks again for having me on.
I'm grateful. I'm appreciative. I've learned a ton from you, and I'm excited just to stay in your world and consider you as one of my friends, brother. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. It was awesome.
Well, my name is Abel Pacheco. You heard another amazing interview with Brian Adams on the 5 Talents podcast. So if you've got some value from today, I know you did, go reach out to Brian. Tell him you heard him on our podcast. Go to our podcast, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, leave us a written review. We love those things. It helps us continue on the march. And thank you very much. We'll see you on our next show. Brian, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the 5 Talents podcast with your host, myself, Abel Pacheco. Each week, we're going to bring you interviews from industry experts and commercial real estate investors who followed their dreams and achieved massive success. Before you leave, let me ask you a few questions. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you learn something valuable? Was your mind stretched to what's possible and what you can achieve? Do you want other experts just like the one you heard today? If you answered yes to any or all of those questions, then please take a moment to subscribe to the 5 Talents podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and most importantly, leave us a written review. Tell us what you liked, tell us your favorite guest, give us any feedback. I'm excited to learn and improve so you can get a more valuable show. So thank you again for subscribing to the 5 Talents podcast.